Welcome to a new episode from English Plus Podcast. Today we will talk about common mistakes and we will focus on adjectives and how we use adjectives. So we will have some sentences with mistakes in them, and then I will help you spot and fix those mistakes. And of course, we will talk about why this is a mistake and how we can fix those. So without further ado, let's start with some sentences where we have common mistakes where we need to fix. And remember, the focus is on adjectives. So I'll start with these two sentences and I want you to think about them and maybe pause the episode and try to figure them out on your own before you listen to the explanation that I will give you. So the first sentence is, I answered her as casual as I could. In the second sentence, when I first got the camera, it worked perfect. So what is wrong with these two sentences? Obviously, the mistake is in the adjective, so think about it. What do you think? Well, the problem here is that when we want to say how, we normally use an adverb. So we here say casually, not casual, not the adjective. And we say, for example, perfectly, not perfect. For example, when we want to talk about how she speaks English, we say she speaks English fluently. We are describing a verb. An adverb adds a detail to the meaning of a verb, not an adjective. Or when we say he always listens patiently to what you say. So patiently, not patient. I don't use the adjective in this case. Or when I say it rained heavily all day. So heavily, the adverb, not the adjective. But note, however, that after a linking verb, we use an adjective. We say, for example, she was or she looked or she stayed very calm, not calmly in this case. But that is only after linking verbs, not after regular verb. So coming back to these two sentences we started with, we said, I answered her as casual as I could. And here I am describing the way I answered her, so I should use an adverb instead of an adjective. So we should say, I answered her as casually as I could. And the second one we said, when I first got the camera, it worked perfect. But here, perfect is an adjective, and I'm talking about how it worked. So I should use an adverb. I should say, when I first got the camera, it worked perfectly. So that was our first set of mistakes. Let's move on to talk about the second problem or the second common mistake for today. Let's take a look at these examples. It was an unusual, difficult question. Make sure that the spray is environmental friendly. So here, what do you think the problem is in these two sentences? Now, the problem is, again, the same. We're using an adjective where we should use an adverb instead. And why is that? We don't have a verb we're describing here. In the first one, we said it was an unusual, difficult question. And we said before, with linking verb, and the verb to be happens to be one of them, we can use adjectives, right? Yes, but here I am using unusual to describe another adjective. So I cannot use an adjective to describe an adjective. I need to use an adverb to modify or to describe an adjective. So to modify an adjective like difficult and friendly, in our examples, we use an adverb. So we should say, instead of it was an unusual, difficult question, we should say it was an unusually difficult question. And in the second example, make sure that the spray is environmental friendly. That's wrong. We should say environmentally friendly. So here we use an adverb to describe an adjective, or the correct term, to modify an adjective. Now let's move on to the third common mistake we have for today. Let's take a look at these two examples. World peace is a very common debated subject. These severe handicapped children need special help. So it is a similar problem, to be honest, and it shouldn't be difficult by now for you to pinpoint the problem and fix it. Have you figured it out yet? Let's see. To modify a participle used as an adjective, like in our examples here, debated and handicapped, we use an adverb. So, for example, we say frequently discussed proposal. frequently discussed. Discussed here is the participle that we use as an adjective. Or we say, for example, a badly managed company. So managed here is the participle that we use as an adjective. And if we want to modify this participle, we use an adverb, not an adjective. We say a badly managed company, or poorly ventilated rooms, or an amazingly boring lecture. I hope this is not an amazingly boring episode, but the point is, if you want to describe an amazingly boring something, it's an amazingly boring, not amazing boring, not an adjective to describe another adjective, even if this adjective is a participle, but we use it as an adjective. So it's just like the common mistake we figured out earlier. So going back to our sentences, we can't say world peace is a very common debated subject. We should say a very commonly debated subject. Or these severe handicapped children need special help. It's not severe handicapped, it's severely handicapped children need special help. And now we will talk about another point, and that is when we use adjectives as nouns. But before we do that, let me remind you that there is a link in the description of this episode that will take you to our website, EnglishPlusPodcast.com. You will go there and you will find a custom post for this episode where you will have everything you need to practice the things you're learning here and to have everything you need to improve your English. Every post is different based on the topic of the post. So sometimes we have a big PDF that you can download and practice. Sometimes we have other interactive activities. It depends on the topic. So take the link, go to our website and improve your English. Take it to the next level. And if you like the content we're creating and you would like to support us, you can take the second link you can find in the description and go to our Patreon page and become our patron. Support English Plus Podcast and help us create more of the content you like and reach more and more people. Now, that being said, let's move back to our episode and talk about some common mistakes we make when we use adjectives as nouns. Let's take a look at this example. She has spent most of her life helping the poor. What's wrong with that? Now, obviously, you can see that poor is an adjective and I'm using it as a noun. I said help the poor or helping the poor. What's wrong with that? Well, instead of saying poor people, we often say the poor, using the adjective as a noun. Now, adjectives used as nouns and ed forms used as nouns do not take a plural ending. We say, for example, he is collecting money for the blind, or the injured have been taken to hospital. But we don't say the blinds or the injureds. Maybe the injureds sounds weird, and you would never put an S after an ed. But for the blind or the poor, you might be tempted to add an S because you're talking about all poor people or all blind people. And like here in the injured, we're talking about all the people injured in this accident, for example. So it is plural, and that's true. The meaning is plural, but it cannot be in plural. It cannot take a plural form, even if it means plural. So here coming back, the mistake is obvious. She has spent most of her life helping the poor. Well, I know, and you know by now that, yes, she's talking about the poor people. She's talking about plural, but we cannot put an S to this adjective when we want to use it as a noun, even if we mean plural by it. So we should say she has spent most of her life helping the poor, not the poors. And now let's take a look at two more examples. His younger sister is a disabled, and by acting as an insane, he managed to escape the death penalty. So what is wrong with that? Well, here again, as you can see, we are using those adjectives disabled and insane as nouns. But is it okay to do that? Or is it okay to use it the way we use it in singular with a and an? Maybe that's the problem. Some adjectives are used as nouns, like we said, the poor, the blind, the insane, and some past participles are used as nouns like the retired, the disabled, the uneducated. And these words are nearly always used with the and refer to all the members to a class or group. Now we say, for example, why do the deaf receive such little sympathy? And here, when we say the deaf, we mean all deaf people. And when we say, for example, the injured were taken to hospital, and that means all the people who were injured. But we cannot use them with determiners that have a singular meaning, like a, an, another, or each. And that is the problem, and that's the common mistake we had in those two sentences I told you about. So here we cannot say his younger sister is a disabled. We can say his younger sister is disabled. We can use it as an adjective here. We cannot say she is a disabled, and we cannot say, obviously, she is the disabled, because she is not all the disabled people in the world, right? And the same goes for the second one. We cannot say by acting as an insane, he managed to escape the death penalty. That doesn't work. We cannot use determiners with singular meaning. We cannot say an insane in this case. We can say, by the way, an insane person. Okay, because here an goes for person, not for insane. So here, what should we do to fix the problem or fix the mistake here? We should say by acting insane, he managed to escape the death penalty. Not by acting as an insane, by acting insane. So with that being said, that will be everything I wanted to share with you today. I hope you learned something new, and I hope you learned something that will enable you to avoid these common mistakes in your own speaking and writing. Now, I will have to remind you again that you have a link that will take you to our website, EnglishPlusPodcast.com, where you will have a chance to practice the things you're learning here. And there's also another link if you would like to support us on Patreon. You can take the link and become our patron on Patreon. With that being said, this is your host, Danny. I would like to thank you very much for listening to another episode from English Plus Podcast. I will see you next time.